Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Mad Mouth, and I am in Jacksonville for a much different reason. No, I'm not covering the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I'm covering the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, and I'm pleased to be joined by Scott Kornberg. And Scott, give everybody an overview exactly what you do for the Jumbo Shrimp.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for having me on. I do broadcasting here, the team's radio announcer. I also do some media relations as well, so helping facilitate media requests, a little bit difficult in 2021 compared to years past, but definitely something that we really are excited about, and it's just great to be able to work at a ballpark every day.
So the ballpark is
121 Financial Ballpark. So seats about 11,000 people. It was built in 2003. Really is a great, beautiful place to watch a game. Actually, in some ways, it was modeled after Camden Yards in Baltimore. Obviously, we don't have a warehouse here, but it is a great place in terms of the sight lines. Also, in terms of a little bit of the history here as well. Jacksonville is a great baseball history, and we try to reflect that as much as we possibly can with maybe old pictures of players who starred here on their way to the major leagues. But it's a place that's got a lot of energy. A lot of the times, our fans are excellent. As people know about anything with Jacksonville, they've got great fans, and that reflects our players just love playing here every single time they go out.
Okay, Scott, let's talk about how you landed the job at the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. I know you were hired in 2018, but you actually began in 2019. So why don't you give us a little bit of a history about how you landed in the old Big J?
Sure. I'd been working in minor league baseball previously in Myrtle Beach with the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, then the high A affiliate of the Cubs. And then I was doing some college football and college basketball broadcasting at Western Illinois. And, at the time I was in my mid to late 20s, kind of had gotten some advice from people that, you've kind of conquered those smaller markets. It's time to look at something bigger. And fortunately for me, a really good friend of mine had been in this position prior. He was moving on to something different, and for whatever reason decided to recommend me. And for whatever reason, they decided to hire me. But that's how I ended up here. It's a great spot. We've got our first baby here in Jacksonville. We weren't married in Jacksonville, but obviously that part happened while we had lived in Jacksonville, my wife and I. So this has just been a city that's really changed our lives in a lot of ways. So lucky to be here.
So you mean to tell me the little guy or little one, or I call it Rugrat, has a Jacksonville birth line?
He does, yeah.
So.
He was born in Baptist downtown. So he's a Florida man. He's a Jacksonville boy. So we're very, very lucky.
Very nice. Okay, well, that leads me to my next question. How did you get in the business, Scott? Did you idolize anybody? Give us a history there.
I did. I really liked Gary Cohen as a kid, the New York Mets broadcaster. Grew up going to games with my dad, and we'd always have the games on in the car on the way back, or obviously if we were just going to the store or whatever, we were always listening to baseball. So I was always kind of surrounded by that. And I loved him. I loved Ian Eagle, who's I think is just a tremendous broadcaster, Al Michaels, and then my grandparents are from Brooklyn, and they were Brooklyn Dodgers fans, and they'd always talked about this Vin Scully guy. I finally got a chance to listen to him in college. We had gotten MLB Network for the first time, so it was the first time I got exposed to other broadcasters outside of the New York, Philadelphia area. I grew up in New Jersey, and certainly he had a huge influence on me as well. So those were people that I really admired, and from there I went to college. I majored in broadcast journalism and was really lucky to land a gig out of college with a college summer wooden bat league team in High Point, Thomasville, North Carolina, and I've been, again, continue to get really fortunate, really, really lucky to move up the ladder ever since.
Where'd you go to college?
University of Maryland.
So you're a Maryland Terp?
I'm a Terp. Yeah, I think it's the #1 university in the world.
Well, of course you ought to say that about your picking alma mater. I'm a University of South Florida Bull, but meanwhile, my heart's with the Michigan Wolverines.
Sure.
So, we'll keep the Michigan-Maryland thing out the door for a little while since we're teammates at least over the weekend. And, we obviously share the common bond here that we are part of the Miami Marlins organization. The South Florida Tribune obviously covers Miami Marlins and you guys as well, and we're looking to take a trip to Pensacola pretty soon and make a trip here obviously in August. But let's focus on what it's like here. You talk about Ian Eagle. I had the opportunity to meet Ian Eagle one time over right next door, and that's with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tell me a little bit about Ian Eagle. I believe he went to Syracuse University, didn't he?
He did. He is the broadcaster for the Brooklyn Nets. He also does some NFL stuff for CBS, NBA stuff for Turner Sports, and I think he's a great broadcaster because I don't think there's anybody better in non-baseball than Vince Scully. I think would be the very best, but at using the crowd in his calls. So, I've listened to him for quite some time. He did some stuff at WFAN in New York when I was a kid, and some Jet stuff. And so I think I was exposed to him maybe a little bit earlier than other people around the nation, but I just think he's an outstanding broadcaster, and I've heard really great things about how he is as a person.
Yeah, I have no complaints. My dealings with Ian Eagle obviously have been very, very good. And I alluded to the Miami Marlins organization. What are your overall impressions of the Miami Marlins organization?
Oh, it's a great time to be with the Marlins, that's for sure. Talk about a different vibe that you get from ownership once the Derek Jeter, Bruce Sherman ownership came over. And I think, people here recognize that, and I would guess certainly down where you're from, in South Florida, but we are really lucky because we've had a long-standing partnership with the Marlins. Our affiliation dates back to 2009 with them, and so for us, it's been really exciting to see a number of really talented players come through, and that was before this new ownership group has really started to focus on the minor leagues, and they have built up their farm system significantly. And I think this year's team is really starting to bear the fruit of some of the better prospects that the Marlins are sending to Jacksonville, especially now that the Jumbo Shrimp are the AAA affiliate.
Yeah, and we're going to get to the AAA affiliate shortly, but I'm glad you brought that up. So you've got a tough job being a play-by-play announcer, which everybody, by the way, would love to do, and a PR guy, but more so at the AAA level. I got to tell you a story way back in the day when I interviewed for a AAA job with the Buffalo Bisons. Never got that job. I was one of the top 3 finalists, but landed a Class A job with North Carolina as the director of public relations to the Gastonia Rangers. And during that team, I worked with Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, and our team ended up losing 90 games, but had 12 major leaguers, go figure. But let's talk about what it's like to be a play-by-play announcer for a AAA team, knowing full well that you're going to get roster changes all the time. And more importantly, you have to update your PR notes every single day, too. It's not like any of the lower levels where your team is pretty constant during the course, but AAA is a much different animal, isn't it, Scott?
It is, and we want to be thorough. We want to make sure that our obviously media covering us and our fans know as much about guys just from glancing at our game notes or rosters or recaps or whatever it is we're putting out there. So that's a really important thing, and it's a little bit more difficult. Like you said, the roster movement in AAA is a lot more intense than it is in when I was in Myrtle Beach, let's just say, in A-ball. So at the same time, it's exciting. You know that you're one step away with all these players. They know it. They can taste it, and it's really cool because the Marlins, I think in particular, are more aggressive maybe with making player moves than other organizations. A lot of our guys have been kind of going back and forth between Jacksonville and Miami. And so, I think from a player perspective as well, those guys maybe see a teammate go up, and it's like, okay, I could do this if I get in a hot streak or whatever it is. So, yes, a lot more player moves than even when we were in AA, but we obviously like that, and the AAA excitement has been really incredible here in Jacksonville.
Well, I know you deal with a lot of the rehab situations. I believe Garrett Cooper was the most recent one that went down. I guess I missed them by like a matter of a few hours, but you get a lot of guys where the road from I-95 down to Miami is all about 5 hours. Of course, I just took it today. But tell me what it was like to not have baseball in 2020. Obviously the minor leagues got shut down. So what did you do as an organization to try to keep this thing going?
It's a great question. And 2020 was a difficult year, obviously, but we wanted to make sure we were top of mind for people here in Jacksonville. This is such a great city, and there's so much to do. And the pandemic, we wanted to make sure that we were an option for people to think of when they were like, wow, let's try to go out of the house for the very first time. And that's a huge thing for people in the very early stages of the pandemic. So we had non-baseball events because we didn't have baseball. Movie nights, bingo nights, fan batting practices, really a lot of smaller things, low-key more often, making sure they were safe for people was our top priority. But we had a lot of different things here, about 50 different events in 2020, just getting people out to the ballpark, making sure we were top of mind. And again, we are incredibly fortunate that the community really supported us yet again, even in a non-baseball season.
Very good. Well, so you talk about the community. What type of a relationship do you have with the Jacksonville Jaguars? Do you guys get a lot of support from your neighbor, a matter of a few feet away, with mutual cooperation supporting the Jaguars and the Jumbo Shrimp, since you're essentially in the sports complex?
No doubt, and I think that would go the other opposite direction to the arena as well, the Icemen, the hockey team,
right,
here. So, I think that's one of the things that was maybe surprising to me coming to Jacksonville, was how each team supported the other ones. You think there would maybe be a little bit of a rivalry and competition for fans, but it is remarkable. If there's something big going on for the Jumbo Shrimp, the Jaguars are always right there to support us and lend a hand, and the Icemen are the same thing, and I think we are the same way to those guys. We want the Jaguars to win the Super Bowl. We want them to be the very best team in the NFL, because the city is really just super energetic, even more than when we're good, when they are good. So I think it just makes people in the city happy when the Jaguars are good. Same thing for the Icemen, for the hockey fans in Jacksonville. So it's a no-brainer for all of our organizations to support each other. And I was surprised at how high the camaraderie was in coming here, but it's just been a great environment. And I think the fans kind of feed off of that a little bit, going from season to season, Jaguars to Icemen to Jumbo Shrimp throughout the year.
No interview would be complete unless I brought up Urban Meyer. But let's talk about Urban Meyer for a moment. Scott, what is the Urban Meyer effect like here in the Jacksonville area? We know that Shad Khan has deep pockets, wants to bring in a first-class coach with enormous success at the University of Florida. But do you guys feel the vibes and the energy because of Urban Meyer?
Oh, I think so. I think that's absolutely true. I think for the first time in quite a while, there's a hope for sustained success. Obviously, they had a great season a few years ago, and unfortunately haven't been able to duplicate that since. But I think people here are seeing Urban Meyer. They see Trevor Lawrence. They see a brand new coaching staff. They see Travis Etienne. All these different moves are made to make the Jaguars into a winner. Maybe not tomorrow, but hopefully. But also, whenever they're good, hopefully for a long time. And that's something that was a big part of Jacksonville when the Jaguars first came about in the 90s, and those Brunell, Smith, McCardell, Fred Taylor teams, and Marcus Stroud and John Henderson. And I think Urban Meyer is a great job by the Khan ownership to show a commitment that they want to build the same thing now, again, a few decades later.
Okay, let's go back to your PR job for a moment. How tough of a job is it for you, Scott? Obviously COVID-19, when media members actually don't have the complete access that we're normally able to get. I realize that, let's face it, okay, my ability to want to stay in this industry at least 5 more years better allow me more access. I understand the COVID-19, you tolerate it in the Zoom calls. First of all, have you done a lot of Zoom calls with your players? That's the first part of my question. And then the second part of my question will be, how tough of it is it for you not to accommodate those individuals? Start with the first one.
Yeah, so for the first one, it is really tough because we're not allowed in the clubhouse, right? So it's really difficult. How do we get guys to do interviews when we can't even go see them ourselves and make that face-to-face connection and make that ask? So it has been really difficult from our perspective to do stuff because we're kind of stuck up here, and we have people who text us the lineup every single day, and we're lucky that we've got those people who tell us, okay, this is the roster move, but it's a very different vibe in the minor leagues, and that's what makes it really tough. We know that these guys are a step away from the majors, so the restrictions at AAA are way more than any other level. So hopefully when you go out to Pensacola, it'll be a little bit less stringent. But by the same token, they want to make sure that these guys are okay in case something happens in the major leagues, that they're all right, to make sure that because they're one step away, because they can only pull from AAA anyway to the majors, that those guys are all right. And then, from my obviously job perspective, is that we want to make sure we're as accommodating as possible to media, because we know you guys have a job to do. So that's what's made this really difficult, is that it's almost non-existent really for us, for everybody. But luckily we've tried to be as creative as we can in some areas, and maybe that's more focusing on our fans and promotions and things of that nature, because that's really a big part of minor league baseball anyway. But it's a difficult time for everybody, and we can only hope that these restrictions continue to loosen up a little bit.
So are you able to provide any player access whatsoever for media members?
It depends. A lot of the times it depends on which player and how far in advance that request comes, because there's a lot of different hoops we have to go through to get to those guys. So it's kind of a hit or miss different thing.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Okay, like anything else, timing is what it is. So obviously, Jacksonville's been a double-A town for a lot of years, and we're going to get to that in tomorrow's edition of the Sports Exchange with the history. But you'll go from double-A to triple-A, okay? So what's it like for the area itself, knowing you went from double-A to triple-A? How much, number one, do you figure that it'll increase attendance? And two, obviously, the double to triple-A effect is a very substantial climb, because now you're one step away versus two.
Absolutely. So we found that there was a significant, meaningful increase in people saying, wow, we are really interested in coming out to a Jumbo Shrimp game once they come back in May. And this was in the wintertime, obviously, when we first found out we were going to be the AAA affiliate for the Marlins. So, really fortunate that we had a lot of different season ticket holders, obviously, re-up with their tickets or purchase season tickets. So our season ticket holder base is about as big or bigger than it's ever been. When we had socially distanced seating a few weeks ago, we literally were selling out games left and right because the demand was so high. And now we're lucky the protocols for fans have been loosened a little bit, so there is no social distancing. But in the beginning, there were some games where we only had just a few hundred tickets to sell, simply because our season ticket holder base on certain days of the week for packages and whatnot is so high. So people here are incredibly enthusiastic about seeing AAA baseball. And I think that's because, A, it's the highest level of baseball in the minor leagues. Why wouldn't you want to see the very best players? But B, there was AAA baseball here in Jacksonville at one time. So I think for a lot of fans, it's almost a blast of the past prior to that AA era, to kind of go back into the city's history of being a AAA team in the 60s.
Yeah, well, again, when you talk about the AAA, so how much does attendance really spike when you know that one of the Miami Marlins actually does rehab here a little bit? I imagine there has to be some sort of a spike or a walk-up when some of these other guys are actually in town.
Certainly, and I think we've been really lucky. There's been 8 different Marlins, and we're only 43 days into the season, 43 games into the season, that have rehabbed with Jacksonville so far. Most of those guys are here for a few days at a time. Sometimes it's on the road. So that doesn't help home attendance, obviously. But as the Marlins become more and more relevant, and certainly a team that's coming off a playoff appearance, team with a lot of different really talented younger players that are up there right now, like a Jazz Chisholm, for example, or
Right.
Jesus Sanchez, or somebody like that. Once guys of that caliber come by, people see that name of, whoa, I want to see so-and-so play, and this is my chance to do it in this 1 or 2 game window here in Jacksonville. So yeah, there are, more than we thought, really, really big baseball fans here. A lot of people come out to Jumbo Shrimp games because it's a great fan experience. The promotions are excellent, the food is excellent, the fireworks are excellent. But obviously some people do really care about the baseball as well, and the chance to see a major leaguer play for your hometown team is a significant draw.
Well, you have 2 major league teams in the state of Florida. You got the Tampa Bay Rays and the Miami Marlins. And obviously, you work with the Miami Marlins per se. Do you feel that the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp Miami Marlins relationship, and I am putting out on a limb, is a lot stronger with the Marlins than it would be the Tampa Bay Rays, if for no other reason you have the I-95 connection as well? Because let's face the reality, I-95 goes a long way, especially as you take it all the way up to Maine.
Absolutely, yeah. From I-95 in New Jersey is where I grew up. So, I think we're lucky to be with the Marlins, and we have been for a long time, and that dates back more than a decade now. So I can't speak to what it would be with Tampa Bay. I do know they have an excellent organization. Everybody raves about the Rays, just like a lot of people rave about the Marlins. So we're fortunate that we're with a team that's really close to us. And the Marlins, like you said, it's a 4.5, 5-hour drive or so down the road for I-95. So, I think we are really, really lucky, and we consider ourselves very lucky to be with the Marlins like we have been for so long, because we've got a good sense of what they're looking for. They have a really good sense of what we're looking for, and that's what's made this a lot easier in a pandemic, this jump up from AA to AAA is that both sides have a lot of familiarity with each other.
Does your PR staff or communication staff have a lot of communication with the Marlins communication staff at all?
Here and there. It's not as much as you would think. Obviously, the player movement stuff, but not much more than that, really, simply because they're dealing with the big league team. And for us, it's not necessarily all about the baseball. We've got to do that stuff. But a big part of our job, PR-wise, is also the local media here, and they're more interested in that promotion side. So there is some stuff here or there that'll pop up with those guys, and they're great to work with, but not all the time. Not more than every few weeks or so that we get to talk to those guys. But they're excellent whenever we do.
Now, obviously, you've been on the job officially 2019, which more or less coincides with Derek Jeter, Sherman, and so forth. So have you had an opportunity to see a lot of upper management people from the Marlins as they come in and out of the ballpark and look at their roster here? Obviously being AAA Kim Ng, I had a chance to talk to her. I met Derek Jeter for the first time for just a moment, and I'm sure that there's a lot of other executives that pop in here to your 1-2-1 ballpark.
Absolutely. There are guys coming here all the time, and that's what any big league team would do. With the Cubs, in Myrtle Beach, we'd always have people shuttling in and out, and that's because any big league team, and I think the Marlins really have come a long way in this, is they want to be as thorough as possible in their own evaluation with players. They want to make sure they know their guys better than anybody, which they should, but they want to make sure it's not just the coaching staff, it's also their scouts, it's also some of their executives, because you never know what kind of trade talks will pop up. But also, I think mainly from how you treat your players. That really matters in today's day and age. And they want to make sure that playing for the Miami Marlins, whether it's in Miami at Lone Depot Park, or whether it's in A-Ball in Jupiter, or High A in Beloit, Wisconsin, or here in Jacksonville, that they are getting as first class an experience as possible. So they're trying to make sure that those guys, that they know him better than anybody, that they know, okay, this is his strengths, this is his weaknesses, this is what he's working on, here's how far he's come, but also that those guys know that they're giving them everything they possibly can to be successful, to hopefully be a Miami Marlin one day.
Just so you know, folks, this is the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, along with Scott Kornberg. This is the Scott Show here, okay?
I love it.
And I'll tell you what, Scott, I'm not really a big math, but Scott to the second power, so anybody that wants to get involved with a math equation can do that. We are here in Jacksonville, Florida, 5 hours north of Miami. Of course, depends on how fast you ride, but we won't let Smokey look to try to catch the bandit here. But we have a lot of work to be done over the course of the next 2 days. And, Scott Kornberg has been nice enough to allow myself up here. We get a chance to spend a couple days up here, check out the overall operation, and hoping to come back here in August as well. Any closing thoughts about what we've talked about here, the Jacksonville-Miami connection? Scott, the floor is yours.
No, I think you've been very thorough in covering that, and again, want to reiterate how great the Marlins are to work with, how exciting it is to be a part of their organization. Nearly every single outlet's got them as a top 4 or 5 farm system, and we're really starting to see that talent rise up now, and some of the players we've had this year, some of them we've obviously had in the past, and then you kind of look down and you see, okay, so-and-so's in Pensacola, and so-and-so's in Beloit, and so-and-so's in Jupiter. And what a good time to be with the Marlins for us.
By all means. And you know what, Scott, I have a good minor league background as well. I began my covering the Fort Lauderdale Yankees way back in the day, back in the 1980s. Okay, we won't get into the age card, okay, because I am approaching Social Security in about 3 years. But anyways, I understand what it's like to work at this level. Tell me about it from your standpoint. You obviously, like every broadcaster, have aspirations to try to get a big league job. And how difficult is it to get a big league job where your expectations are realistically tempered?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think nearly every broadcaster, if they're being honest with you, is they're trying to move up the ladder. And yeah, of course, I would love to be in the major leagues one day. But as you know, it's a really, really difficult thing to do. And that's why we have to work as hard as we possibly can here. You have to be the best version of yourself you possibly can be. And that's making sure that you're incredibly thorough in your work, making sure you know where you have to get better, obviously treating people well, wherever you are. And the odds are long, but somebody's got to do those jobs, and we have to hope it's ourselves one of these days.
And for people looking to get in on the PR side, Scott, as we wrap this conversation up, how many hours a day do you work during the season versus the off season? For a lot of people realize that PR work is not easy. You have to update everything, with press releases online and so forth. But let take us inside the world of a PR guy. We all know that if you're a good broadcaster, if you don't do your homework, then you'll be exposed. But talk about the inside for PR people.
It's similar. It's a tough climb to the top. The PR people in the major leagues are really, really good. And again, it's about being accurate. It's about being thorough. It's about making sure that you're, again, being the best possible version of yourself. That's all any of us could ask for in any industry. And the hours are long, but I think a lot of us would say, man, we get to work at a ballpark. How cool is that? We come here and watch baseball. Could be a lot worse. So it's a difficult job. It's long days. At the same time, the off season is a nice little break, and we start to miss baseball again pretty soon after the season ends. So it's both are difficult career paths, but both are excellent career paths. And I think anybody in my shoes would probably give you a similar answer, that it's a difficult road to the top, but we appreciate every moment.
Well, I know one thing, folks. This is not a 9-to-5 gig. Any good PR guy that does what he's supposed to do probably spends as much as 12 to 18 hours a day during the season, maybe not so much during the off season. So any closing thoughts, Scott, before we wrap up this edition of the Sports Exchange? We will do this again tomorrow, but we're going to talk history.
No, I'm looking forward to tomorrow, Scott. Thank you again for having me on.
All right, everybody. Once again, my name is Scott Morganoff, the Motor City Madmouth, live from Jacksonville, Florida. For Scott Morganoff, along with Scott Kornberg. Scots are wild. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange.